Hello. Thanks for joining me as we continue our talk on worldviews. What is a worldview? A worldview is a set of beliefs or values that someone has that governs sort of the way they act and how they view the world. Think of it as a lens by which they view the world and everything around them. Now, a worldview has four basic components to it. Any worldview will speak to four different areas, four questions, if you will. The first of which is the whole, where did we come from? We'll always say something about that. And also a question of meaning, which is, why are we here? Then there's the whole good and bad thing. I mean, how do we determine what's good and what's bad and all of that? And finally, a worldview will have something to say about, well, where's it all going? Is it all going anywhere? A worldview will speak to each of these areas. Now, last week we looked a little bit at atheism. We're going to continue to look at it this week as well. Atheism, as it's defined, probably the best concise definition that I've ever found was from Etienne Born, who said, "Atheism is the deliberate, definite, dogmatic denial of God." Atheism is the deliberate, definite, dogmatic denial of the existence of God. Now, atheism can be distilled into four main beliefs. That is, that there is no God, there is no supernatural, there is no spirituality, and there is no afterlife. These are, let's say, some of the basic tenets of atheism. Before we've looked at atheism and the question of origin. Today, let's look at atheism and the question of meaning. The whole, why are we here? Now, the text I'm going to be using and pulling from is Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And in that, King Solomon is looking back on his life. He's reflecting over things. And as he does, he's saying, hey, everything is just meaningless. I mean, here's this guy who's been fabulously wealthy, who's been extremely wise, who has done a number of things, and yet he says it's meaningless. It's all just meaningless. Now, one thing I don't want you to do is to watch this and go away and say, well, the Bible says that life is meaningless. Because that's not the case. You've got to go to the end of Ecclesiastes where Solomon says, except, everything's meaningless except knowing the one true Creator God and having a relationship with Him. Now you see, Solomon came to that conclusion ultimately, but his cry all through Ecclesiastes as he pursued meaning in wealth and in fame, in all sorts of accomplishments, he kept coming back to not being fulfilled, saying that everything is meaningless, it's chasing after the wind. And Solomon's cry of everything is meaningless actually does echo the cry of many atheists who say that the universe is random and basically life has no meaning. Atheism says the universe is random and life has no meaning. Bill Nye, the Science Guy, expressed this in a press conference a little while back when he said something to the effect that he said, "I am nothing." He said that basically I'm a speck. I'm a speck on a planet, a planet that's a speck in a galaxy that's a speck in the universe. He said, I'm a speck on a speck on a speck. I'm nothing. And you see, that cry out that I am nothing, that life has no meaning, that the universe is random, that sums up the atheistic position. However, the atheist would also say, life has no meaning, but we make our own meaning. Atheists believe we create our own meaning. Now, this could be many things for many people. It could be pursuing the most money. It could be, acquiring the most land, or the greatest collection of KitchenAid appliances or something. I don't know, just made that one up. But it could be a number of different things for different people. But you see, atheism says we make our own meaning, and I think there's some problems with that. For example, what if my meaning happens to clash with yours? What if it is at odds with yours? Well, it's going to be conflict, isn't there? You see, this is something we see in everyday life. In fact, I think, a good example might just be looking at kids. There are basically two types of kids in the world when it comes to Legos. The first kid is the builder. They're the Lego builders. They get out the kit, they follow the instructions, they build things, they create things, and there you go, they love it. But the second kid, their joy is in the breaking. And they love to smash things, and they just love seeing the Legos fly everywhere. And so there are builders and there are breakers. What do you do when your meaning is at odds with another person? There's going to be conflict. And indeed, on a planet with finite resources, where everything is limited like this, when groups of people are together and define their meaning, you know there's going to be conflict. We call those things wars. So you see, even if we have the same goal, because there's finite resources, there can be conflict. Another problem is, what if the meaning that you choose ultimately turns out meaningless? What if the meaning that you choose doesn't fulfill you and it doesn't work, and at the end of your life you just, it's meaningless? I mean, that's what Solomon was finding. He pursued fulfillment and wealth and things, and at the end, no, that didn't work. There's so many contemporary examples. If I just name names, people who have pursued something, whether it's fame or money, but at the end of their lives it just didn't satisfy, and they went into some sort of spiral because of that lack of fulfillment. There's been a number of people, Judy Garland, Elvis Presley, Kurt Cobain, the list goes on and on. Somewhere along the way, what they were looking for ended up not really fulfilling them in the ways that they thought it would. Not completely. Now, if the meaning that you choose ends up meaningless, well, atheism has no answer for that. Now, please, don't at all think that I'm saying that every atheist is drowning in depression, because actually far from it. What I am saying is what I observe in life, and I think many of us also observe in life, is that people will often chase after something and then find out that that thing that they had ascribed, that was their meaning and all, it was their purpose, it just didn't fulfill. It just didn't fulfill. And I just see that over and over and over. All that I'm saying is, when it comes to meaning, don't settle for distraction. Don't mistake distraction for meaning. Don't mistake distraction for meaning. Atheism says life has no meaning. It's something that we make up. Atheism says life has no meaning, and I disagree with that. In fact, I think that in human experience is totally at odds with that. I mean, really, if you were to leave here and you were to go home and suddenly your neighbor's house were to catch on fire, and you hear your neighbor screaming for help, what are you going to do? You're going to run over there and try and help your neighbor. And when you go in, If your neighbor's there and his lizard's there, his pet lizard and all, I mean, who are you going to save? You're going to save the human. Why? Because human life has value. It has intrinsic value, and we just know this. This is how we operate. And so I think the statement that life has no meaning I think it kind of breaks down when it comes to human experience. But you know what? The thing about manufacturing your own meaning to life, I don't think that works either. You see, if I manufacture the meaning of life, then that means that I define the value of life as well. And if I say what the value of life is, then I can impose some scary limits. Things can get a little fuzzy. Let me give you a few examples here. You could be all over the map on this. Ethicist Peter Singer said in 1979 that human babies are not born self-aware or capable of grasping that they exist over time. They are not persons. Therefore, the life of a newborn has less value than the life of a pig, a dog, or a chimpanzee. I don't think I can go with that one. Singer, from this point, was able to go on in his reasoning later on in his life and reason that he could advocate that parents should have 30 days after a child is born to evaluate it. Maybe they want to, maybe they don't. And they could euthanize the child and say it's disabled or something like that. And I have a big problem with that. You see, the person who defines meaning is the one who assigns value. And that's reality. I mean, it's happened before. Many times in our history, but probably the most, one of the best examples in history, rather, is that of the final solution in Nazi Germany. Adolf Eichmann was one of the main architects of the final solution that Hitler implemented when it came to the Holocaust. And you see, in Adolf Eichmann's meaning was a framework that said that certain people are worth more than other people. That's problematic. See, because the one who defines meaning assigns value, and if you define meaning and someone and this meaning of life is here and someone else's meaning of life is different, maybe far different than yours, maybe it might even scare you a little bit, make you uneasy, then you might assign that person a lesser value. You see, the person who defines meaning assigns value. Adolf Eichmann assigned a far lesser value to Jews, to Poles, Gypsies, and a whole group of other people, and instituted the largest mass murders in history. After the war, Adolf Eichmann fled to Argentina with his family, and a group of Israelis were after him. They were tracking him down to bring him to justice for war crimes. They finally caught up with him several years later, and one of them was Peter Malkin, and he recalled, he broke his silence after 30 years and wrote down his experiences, and he recalled sitting there and staking out Eichmann, and Eichmann would come home, get off at the bus stop, and then walk home, and as he would walk home, he'd walk up, and there, greeting him at the door, was his son. Little boy, about 6 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. Daddy, Daddy. Eichmann would swoop him up in his arms and all of that. And Malkin just couldn't get this picture out of his mind, because he had a nephew that was 6 years old. He was 6 years old when he went to the camps. Never seen or heard from again. Well, that fateful day came when Eichmann got off the bus stop, and then Malkin got out and said, "Un momento, senor," and then snatched him and threw him in the car. And there he's being whisked away to the airport to be flown to stand trial for his war crimes. Malkin knew he'd never get another chance like this to just ask a question or say something, talk to him to make some kind of connection to where he could actually find out why or how a human could be. How a human being could do these things that he did. And in doing that, he turned and he addressed Eichmann. And he said, my sister's son was 6 years old, blonde-haired, blue eyes, just like your boy back there. And yet, you killed him. I know Malkin hoped for some sort of connection, something that would usher in that answer to the question of why, but Eichmann turned to him and only had 5 words. He said, "But your nephew was Jewish." In Eichmann's mind, he had his meaning and had assigned their value. The value of Peter Malik, the value of his nephew. Life has meaning. It really does. Christians believe that life has meaning because it's a gift from God. God says life has meaning. Genesis 1:31, He creates everything and says it's good. Life is a gift from Him, so therefore, yes, it has meaning because it's from God Himself. It's not just that He says that it has meaning, it's that He has shown us that it has meaning. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, so that whoever would believe in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. Now, you see, that right there, He's shown us that life has meaning because it was worth a sacrifice. It's worth a sacrifice. Atheism says that life has no meaning, that the universe is random. Christianity would disagree with both of those statements. But Christians and atheists actually do agree on one statement, one big thing. Christians and atheists both believe that meaning is not found in a what, but it's found in a who. Christians and atheists both believe that meaning is not found in a what, but it's found in a who. It's just that atheists say, the who? Me. I get to define it. True, it may be at odds with other people, and that works itself out in all kinds of ways, but I define meaning. Christians say, no, Jesus Christ has defined meaning. He has defined meaning. He has showed us that life does have value, that life does have meaning. Christians believe that our meaning and our purpose comes from outside ourselves, from God Himself, an infinite creator God who made us and who loves us, and who wants to have a relationship with us, because God Himself is love. Human beings have meaning because we are created in His image. And therefore, with this gift of life, we reflect Him. Even though we are broken, and in a broken world, yes, but we still do reflect Him to some degree. Our purpose in life is to glorify God, to come to know Him, to be in a relationship with Him. In a relationship with God, we are called then to love Him, and to express that love not only towards Him, but also to others. Indeed, relationship with God and with others is our purpose. That is the meaning of life. You know, actually, I like the way that Jesus said it best. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That is the meaning of life. Till next time.